if you want to come up to the podium. 4.03 is transportation analysis for 2025, the busing contract, and 4.04 is the budget presentation.
So can you zoom in on that? I mean, I can't see it from here either, and I have my glasses on. As we talked about, I mean, this is part of our strategic plan, as well as we've talked about a number of other meetings, is we went out to bid for our transportation services. Bid opening was 2 weeks ago or so. Long story short, the attached PDF, it provides the analysis of what we had received back in the bids. We had 3 companies attend the pre-bid meeting. It was STA, it was an incumbent of First Student, and then we had Christ Transportation also attend. However, when it came to bid opening, Christ declined to submit a bid at this time. So really, we received 2 bids, First Student and STA, and then the rates you can see here. This is the first page. These are all the rates that are provided. Grant, that first row where you see overall bid price, the way that transportation companies submit their bids, they basically say 180 days times their actual rate for a normal run. They don't account for summer school, monitor hours, etc. Although we provide all that information to them, they don't submit that as a part of it. So that takes us to, because that has to be part of the consideration of our total cost associated for the bid price itself. You can scroll to the second page there, Hunter. This is the cost as you're breaking this down. We have about 185 days of school. The reason why is we transfer to students to non-public schools, so it's more than the 180 days that we have here. And the average is about 185. And that includes charter schools too, etc. No, I can't see that. Can you zoom back in on that? Yeah, scroll to the top. There you go. And then we have 67 routes. So the math is, and then you have the rate. You'll see the rates tied to the rate up above that was submitted through the proposal. The math is just multiply the 3 of them together, gets you that grand total. Second section is our VOTEC run. We have a VOTEC run every day. That takes twice a day, that takes kids out to the VOTEC. The second piece of that is our homeless hours. These are excess hours that are billed for the homeless population. It might be taking a student over to Iroquois. Typically, we wouldn't be doing that because we're only driving around within our boundaries, but there are situations that transportation might be needed outside of that. The third section here, you can see is the monitors, the monitor cost. Currently, we average about 121 monitor hours a day, so you can see the math there, etc. Although, and then here's the big piece, which is the difference is the big difference in the outside of the rates being somewhat different as you're going forward. STA submitted a proposal that basically said any route over 5 hours, they were going to charge the excess route or excess rate for every 15-minute increment. Well, we average about 6.3 hours per route. So that's significant in terms of where we're at. We did have some discussion about that. They felt comfortable with the 5 hours because it limited their exposure. They haven't been with the district. I mean, we provided the 6.3, but that is where they wanted to be for their proposal. So when you look at that second to last section here and you see there's no cost for First Student, it's because First Student gave us the cost per route, and SDA basically said this is our cost at 5 hours per route. And then anything above 5 hours, they're charging us a 15-minute increments at the rate that I provided. Well, that's about $500,000 a year. So that was pretty significant as we're working our way through. So if you look down at the bottom, I have a grand total without diesel, and then I have a grand total at the bottom, which is I purposely put that with the diesel that we pay, and because that will tie to our budget number specifically. Overall, it's about a 20% increase or $962,000 if we go with First Student. STA is about $338,000 more than that. Our recommendation at this moment in time is to engage in contract negotiations with First Student that is incentive based and put some incentive drivers within that contract. If they meet certain qualifications, we'll pay. If they don't, they're gonna have a penalty associated with that. So that's where we are at this moment in time. It was as we this came in a little bit better, quite frankly, than what we expected. I mean, the last time we went out to bid, it was about $1.5 million more per year. So we knew the sizable increase was coming, and it's here. Are there any questions regarding the analysis?
Is STA currently have any other customers in Erie County?
Yes, Harbor Creek and I believe Girard are two for certain, and I think they have one other.
Okay. I'm just Googling a bit about STA, so thank you.
So again, that's 900,000 over the current year cost.
What's in our current budget? $962,000
Right.
more.
More, correct.
If we went with First Student, which is our recommendation. Again, the next step would be negotiating a contract here for which we would try to put some clauses in there that are beneficial to the district and incentivize for quality service.
How many years?
5.
Thank you.
We had a conversation with STA, letting them know that there was 6.3 hours per route was the average
I did, yes.
on the front side, and they still provided.
I mean, the way the process works, see, I have it all laid out in the responses back from our pre-bid meeting. And so I had it included in there and I asked why that was and why they bid. They did a few other kind of strange things as they were going through. I mean, they used 179 days, for example, in the original proposal, which is our school calendar for this upcoming year, but I had asked for 180. So there was a couple just odd things that were going in. Did we talk about it? I asked specifically about the 5 hour because that was a big one for us. What was clear to us is they might pay a little bit more an hourly rate, and I did provide that in terms of the statistics up there as you were going, but they were really comfortable, or they didn't want to create more exposure for them. Given how big we are, I mean, we're not a small district. The amount of capital investment they have to bring in buses and whatnot, they wanted to stay at the 5 hours. And I'll follow up again, have a conversation, but that's where we are.
They built this rate off of the number of hours per route or the number of routes we took? Or a combination of both?
That's a great question. So
Because I'm a little confused, because if their hang up is 5 hours and it's just a lump sum, then routes. But
that's not how it works, is that you're going to be getting the same out. Well, I don't know if it'll be the same outcome, but you're adding more to the cost regardless, right? Because if you're running 70 routes, you're being charged for 70, not 67. And then you might have less excess hours. So there's going to be more of a cost one way or another. I understand the point you're getting at as we're working our way through. So the process, just like how you bid it, you give the specifications. I asked specifically because both companies didn't account for the specifications, like the monitor hours, for example. We defined that there was about 120 monitor hours per day, and basically they just gave us the monitor hourly rate.
What kind of requirements on fleet upgrades and mandatory retirements, et cetera? I see some of the buses still say Mill Creek Township, and they're kind of like painted over to say First Student or something. I ran into one the other day or something. So is like the average age of our fleet 10 years or newer? Or?
It's younger than in our contract, and I'm going from memory. They can't be older than 10 years, but we have it broken out by percentages. So many percent should be within 5 years, or so on and so forth. I can't remember the exact details, but that already exists in our existing agreement.
And that would carry forward.
Yeah, I would ensure that that's in there. And the reason why that's really important for us is the younger the younger the bus, that's not the correct term to use, but you understand what I'm getting at, is the more subsidy we'll receive in return. So we do monitor that to ensure that we're maximizing our subsidy.
I know the board member's been around, there's always been a shortage of bus drivers, and remember the signs out there, 13, 14, take a look at this, 24.50 an hour starting. right now for a bus driver, $24.50 an hour. That's a big part of the increase.
So if there's no objection, we'll start negotiations with First Student and see how they go.
But this is a big part of it because this here goes into the budget presentation, obviously $900,000 cost now and more going up. So
Yes, thank you. And I'll touch on that more. Any other questions?
Nope.
Okay. Jerry, if you don't mind, can we go to the you, sir? It's not the right one. No. Here, I'll send it to you real quick. There we go. My apologies. Are we ready? All right. To start off, the first several slides of this is just review from the last presentation. I think it's good to have a clear understanding of where our money comes from, how we spend it, and we look at our really our preliminary budget in its entirety. So again, if you recall this slide shows every school district in the state of Pennsylvania. The darker purple means the more you rely on state revenue. The darker blue, it's the more that you rely on local revenue. And I like this slide because it's a great visual that shows in northwestern Pennsylvania, we're an anomaly. Most rely on state money. Us and maybe two others rely on local resources heavily. So if we look at that, and that local resources is made up primarily of two components here, right? The equations, your assessed value times the millage rate gives you your taxes, essentially. Well, the assessed value, you can see here from 2015 to this current fiscal year, I mean, we were experiencing some growth in our assessed value. We've really leveled off. This slide is more evidence than ever that we need a countywide reassessment. Terribly, the CLRs in the 50s at this moment in time, but more importantly, as you can see here, I mean, we're leveling off, and that is that is a direct reflection on revenue for us moving forward. We look at the other side of the equation, which is the tax rate. Our current tax rate ranks 6 out of the 13 districts around us. However, if you look at this slide, you can see that we're one of the very few that rely heavily on local resources, but meanwhile, our tax rate's middle of the road. If we look at this slide again, this is just important to illustrate the compounding effect of taxes. If you recall up top, the top section, you can see it from 3 different fiscal years. No tax increase in the first 2009, 2010 means you're out $1.7 million of revenue. You can increase it 5.2, you're up 1.2 million. And then 11, 12, if you didn't raise taxes, we would have been out 1.2 over a 3-year period. That's 1.8. But The reality of it is our taxes are compounded every year. So that isn't the true math. The true math is down below where you can see the compounding. Zero from 2009, 2010, 0% tax increase means district lost out on $1.7 million of revenue. 5.23% tax increase generated. When you compound that, you're at 740. 11, 12, 5.3, a little over 2 million. Truth is we lost out on $4.5 million compared to the 1.8 because of the compounding effect. This is a good, I like this slide a lot. On the right-hand side, you'll see the percentage increase of taxes that we've had since 2010. The graph below in the middle here represents the line graph. Red is the tax rate for MTSD. The green represents the percent increase by CPI, and the gray represents a percentage increase by COLA. Why did we use CPI and COLA? They're two good inflationary numbers to try to benchmark. If we look at this, and you can really see since 2019 or so, 18, you can see the gap widening between the red, the green, and the gray. Essentially, our tax rate's not keeping up with inflation is the point of showing this slide as we're working through. And as a result of that, since 2019, MTSD is 4.64% behind CPI and 13.14 behind COLA. And that's lost revenue about 3 million related to CPI and 8 million related to COLA. And again, I think that's really important to bring up because our tax rate's not keeping up with inflation. We rely heavily on our local resources as we see this, which is much different than most of the districts around us. And you want to look at the state level, we rank 427 out of 500 districts. Only 73 school districts across the state spend or generate less revenue per student than we do. So let's flip this on the other side. If you remember this, this is just the cohort data of how I came up with the districts that are like us, comparable to us. So this is total expenditures. The red line represents Mill Creek. Black line represents districts that are common like us, our free and reduced percentage, our size, etc. The gray line represents IU 5 average, and the green line represents the state average. So again, we rank 433 out of 500 districts. If we don't generate enough revenue, we're clearly not going to spend, right? And this is a side. There's only 67 districts in the entire state of Pennsylvania that spend less per student than Mill Creek. Let's talk a little bit about another layer deeper here as we're going through. And, we've added quite a few positions over the last several years. A lot of that relates to additional security or special education specifically, for which there are those ratios are really state determined. One autistic classroom is one teacher to eight students, and you also have 2 aides in there, right? So it's really important to understand that for the next couple of slides, because as you can see here, our demographics are changing. On the left-hand side, this is our demographics as of October 1st, 2013. We had about 7,200. If we go straight down to the bottom, we had about 7,200 students. Our free and reduced percentage was 33%. Of our total student population, 1.2% was English language learner, and then about 14.7% of our total population related to special education students. Fast forward to this past October, we've got about 6,400 students. Our free and reduced percentage is about 43%. Our English language learner population has increased to 5.4%. And if you recall, we've added several different MLL teachers over the last 2 years, and that's a direct result of this. And then our special education population has increased to 20.8, and we've added a number of special education classrooms too. And this slide is really here to show why we're adding those. It's the increase in enrollment. Excuse me. So let's take a look at our staffing review over the several years. Up at the top, I have 5 different years here, from 2021 to 2022, all the way to our proposed budget for this upcoming year. First row represents administration, our teachers, our educational assistant, secretary, psychologists, et cetera, down the line. And as we mentioned, you can see the changes from 2021 to this upcoming proposed budget. But you can see our teachers, our administration decreased by 2. Our teachers have increased by 13. Our educational assistants have increased by, what is that, 18? And that is a little bit of a misnomer because through our last negotiations, we recognized 5 ed assistants as secretaries in this fiscal year. So when you see 40 for the secretaries down below, truthfully, that is just 5 people that were historically coded as an educational assistant. So really, at the end of the day, that's up 23 in the grand scheme of things. And then most of the others are relatively flat. The custodians, 57, aligns with the proposal that we provided last month. And our classified and tech position and our security, you can see we started at with 4. We're posing an additional for this upcoming budget to give us 12 SSOs district-wide. That's 1 at every building, including the Ridgefield campus, that will be housing several different programs, and then 1 floater that sits at the high school in the walkway. So yeah, it given a general idea of FTEs, and then the other the conversation that typically comes up is what's the student teacher ratio. You can see at the end of the day we're towards the top, but we're relatively in the mix for our teacher student ratio when compared to everybody in the IU5. Enrollment projections. So this shows the enrollment for the last 10 years or so, 11 years. And you can see how we have declining enrollment. We expect our enrollment to remain relatively flat, but we're going to have a whole lot more information regarding our enrollment when the demographer comes and gives us the study that was board approved in January. But anyhow, this slide, I wanted to show the enrollment, and you can see the decline. We do expect that to flatten out over the net for the foreseeable future, but the green line represents our free and reduced percentage. You can see that increase. The red line represents our special education percentage. That's increasing, and then the MLL is the green line all the way at the bottom. This is just looking at our enrollment based on grade level. Okay, with that said, I'm going to get right into the preliminary budget here. I showed you the staffing 2 slides ago, but this is just showing it more from a language perspective rather than visually. Is we've added 2 autistic teachers and 4 aides. We have to add a classroom to Walnut. We have 2 classrooms that we have to add for our artistic program. We're adding another MLL, requesting to add another MLL teacher. The 5 alternative education positions that were just board approved last month. 2 full-time custodians. We're removing the part-time positions. An aide, 2 autistic aides at the high school, a secretary, and there's more extracurricular hours for our elementary school in SSO overtime. What recognized is at the secondary level, we do have time budgeted for teachers and or security to manage a dance. At the elementary level, we do not. Well, we're trying to rectify that in this upcoming budget. Moving on, some of the other big points off of this is 20% increase. We just talked about transportation, $962,000. That's equivalent to about 1.5% tax increase. Just the increase in our transportation. We had an increase of about $300,000 in our debt service. This is going to be level funded from here on out. We expected this, but here on out it's going to be level funded, and there won't be an increase of that. 13% or $1.4 million increase in our healthcare. We'll go over that here in a little bit, but we've been really, really lucky over the last 5-6 years. I mean, our increases in healthcare have been about 3-4%. It's finally caught up where we're hitting more national trend data increases here. Additional curricular resources, $700,000 in the custodial equipment based on the analysis that we provided in February, and the proposed budget includes a 3% tax increase. So let's go into the numbers. Again, the structure of these slides I try to keep relatively similar. So you have up at the top a description where we ended last fiscal year, where our budget is this current fiscal year, where we forecast to end this fiscal year, our budget proposal for next year, the variance between the two budgets, and the percent change as you're going. Real estate taxes, and I'm going to really focus, and then down the left-hand side, you'll see the explanation of what row we're talking about, the specific type of revenue and or expense. I'm going to focus on the variance side. We're up about 1.9 million. It's 3%. That's a 3% tax increase that I just mentioned that were included in this budget. Slightly, I mean, it's 2.09, and 09 relates to assessed value change, which was immaterial at the end of the day. Our interim taxes are down. I mean, there's not as much construction. Money's expensive. And you can kind of see, I'm going to jump down EIT, 500,000. That's the expected wage growth that we're expecting. We do have Burkheimer run us a nice little study to see how close we are based on their expectations. Real estate transfer taxes, and then our other local revenue, as you can see there, for a grand total of 39 million and or I switched 81.8 million, or an increase of about 2 million. So let's flip over to the state side. Long story short, I followed our board policy. We basically say for our basic ed and our special education subsidies that we will budget at the prior year allocation amount. That's exactly what we did. In the given year, we'll take that amount, and if it is over our budget, we will make it as a capital projects transfer. That is embedded in our board policy. So we're going to follow suit with that. The one thing that I think is really important to note as we're working or looking down through here is the other line item down at the bottom includes there was an adequacy. We received an adequacy supplement of about $900,000. I used 75% of that. I don't know whether we'll get it this upcoming year or not. You're talking about 600, a little over 600 grand, but I thought we needed to use some of it as we're moving forward. And then when you're talking about the forecast of the $2.5 million out of that, $1.4 million of that relates to the ADA restroom project and exterior restoration. And then another $900,000 of that relates to the adequacy fund that I just said. So those were not anticipated this upcoming year, but we did write grants, and then we did get additional adequacy funding. Federal really is what federal is. At the end of the day, we expect it to remain relatively flat. We literally just got last Thursday allocations for this current fiscal year. We matched it. So it matches what our current allocations are in the current fiscal year as we're moving forward. We are trying to increase our access funds. I mean, that is embedded as part of our strategic plan, and we'll continue to move in that direction. So if we just look at our total revenue over the last over time, this just shows a bar graph of that, the increases, and more importantly, 66% of our total budget is locally generated. Look at total revenue. This is just a bar chart or pie chart that shows something's not right with the pie chart itself, but long story short, the purpose of this slide is 51% of our total budget is real estate taxes. We rely heavily on our local budget, which is primarily made up of our real estate taxes. So let's flip over to the expenditure side. The structure of the slides remain the same. We had over 30 replacements, whether that be through resignations or retirements of teachers. That's pretty big. We did move one position into administration, which has helped driving that $363,000 increase. It's all the positions I just labeled at the end of the day, plus all the new agreements we just approved in November, I think, or October. So this is the outcome.
And the delta last year with admins was 1?
Yeah, because we were trimming back. We added a whole position.
Does it go up that much?
Plus the new agreement that was just a board approved in November or October, I think, which was
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
right. Most of these have a new agreement that is attached to them. Benefits. your FICA and PSERs are percentage of your salaries as we're working our way through. So those are the two big increases that you're seeing here. Good news is PSERs went from 33.9% to 34, and not like the large jump that everybody was expecting. So that's good. Downside to this is when we're looking at the benefits, yeah, healthcare, $1.4 million increase, 13%. I mean, you can see last year we started real late last year. I mean, we came in at, and these numbers are audited at 11.4 million. We only budgeted 10.5. So healthcare has finally caught up with us, and it's required. I mean, we're getting closer to the industry trends, but we're going to have to catch up a little bit of this year's budget because of last year's budget being short. We look at other expenditures. Again, I'm going to focus on the big ones. So the total contracted cost, the variance of last 909,000. That primarily relates to the Sarah contract revisions that we did, as well as removing the All Ed program from being a contracted service to holding it in house. Some of those different pieces of it. And the camera project, a piece of the camera project was budgeted there in the current fiscal year, and it isn't for this upcoming year. So that helps drive that variance there. Transportation, field trip, travel, 962,000 makes up that 1.1 million. But we didn't just receive an increase on our base transportation rates. It also was an increase on our field trips. So you're seeing 1.1 million. Curricular resources and utilities are going up, 543,000. The equipment of 616,000 variance is 700 of that relates to custodial proposal that we just submitted, and then 300,000 of the 386 represents our new debt service that will be level funded from here on out. So that explains most of those variances as we sit here. Again, bar chart for the last several years. Big point here: 69% of our total budget is made up of salary and benefits. Makes sense because we're in a service-oriented industry. That's where most of our money should be. All right, taking this a look forward as summary is what's this outcome? So if you take your revenue, spend it minus your expenditures, where do we end? I'm going to focus on the 25-26 budget. We're short 1.5 million, but we also know that we have a board motion that earmarks our investment income, our gate receipts, our participation fees, etc. Therefore, that money is already earmarked and should be saved every year. So we have to subtract that out, which means our current budget is short $3.7 million. Our current year forecasted to be short about 2.5. So if we move that forward, what are our balancing choices for our next year's budget? We're short 3.7 million. We're going to go, we requested 7 positions at custodian. We're going to request 2 as we're working our way through here. We're in the process of right now cutting $765,000 out of our building and department budgets. We could probably be more aggressive in our long-term subs. The idea behind that is if someone leaves, we hire a long-term sub, you're not paying the teacher too. So you should only have a budget in one item or the other. That's not always the case. I would go out on maternity leave and I might have sick days and I'd be paying that, but also paying a long-term sub. So and then we're suggesting, here are the 2 big ones. We're suggesting revising the board motion that was from like 2019 or 18 or so, where we earmark 100% of our investment income, to revising that to only earmarking 50%. 25% going to capital projects, 25% going to our committed fund balance. That would be a change of $900,000 that allows us to balance this budget as we move forward. The reason why we're saying that is because in your IT, the other 50% was allocated towards PSERs and allocated towards IT equipment. That should be part of your structural budget. We typically do that every year as you're moving forward. We're replacing IT equipment on an annual basis, and PSERs needs to be paid quarterly as well. So having that part of the motion and earmarking it when it should be part of the structural budget makes more sense for us moving forward. And then we do plan on using about $1.5 million in fund balance, which is essentially our equipment purchases less our IT equipment. One-time cost. Yes, thank you. That still means we're short about 122,000, but we're still early. We're getting concrete numbers regarding insurance and these different aspects. So $122,000 over 125 million. We're not going to worry about it at this moment in time. Let's talk about what our last slide here is our fund balance. So where did we end? 20. You can see up top here. We have it broken out as our assigned, non-spendable capital projects, committed, assigned salary and benefits, assigned IT, and the total. If we look down at the bottom section here, we have where we ended last fiscal year. Where we are going to end. I'm sorry, I didn't update those. That should be last fiscal year where we are projecting to end, giving us our ending fund balance for this current fiscal year. And then moving into next year, we're short 1.566 million. And then what that would look like in our fund balance at the end. So that last row there is technically 25, 26. My apologies. That's where we stand. Any questions?
Here, can you just put that one slide back up? Compared the tax increase to, the bar chart with COLA, CPI.
No, keep going.
And then,
That one right there. Yep.
yeah. So just for comparison for the board, I know it's easy to see numbers, the bar graph, but just went back. So in 2022, we raised taxes 4% COLA, which is a raise in Social Security payments increase based on the third quarter CPI, right? In 2022 was 5.9. 2023, we raised taxes 3.9, COLA was 8.7%. 2024, we raised taxes 2%, COLA was 3.2%. 25, which was just made out in October, third quarter, COLA was 2.5. Okay, now that's third quarter. Lots happened since the third quarter, and so we'll see what happens. The Fed back then thought they were going to cut rates 4 times, 2025. Now they cut it to 2, maybe not even 2 now. And that's even not taking effect. COLA. I know, Wade, but there are people at the credit union. What are they saying? Or the rates?
Just pick it, throw it, and you would probably
Right.
do a better job.
So I guess-
the last thing I heard was 3 rate cuts, but now they're saying none. So
Right.
it just depends on the wind and the
And
day.
with tariffs, you don't know. But I guess the point was just wanted to show the details of that. I mean, the bars, and you can see how that gap is wide. Those are the COLAs that, and inflation and what we've raised taxes. I just want to go back and point that out to the board.
Thank you. I mean, the summary of it is we've been really trying to manage our tax increase, which hasn't been keeping up with inflation. We rely heavily on our local resources, which is primarily real estate taxes, unlike most other districts in the state of Pennsylvania, especially within Erie County. There's only 67 districts in the state of Pennsylvania that spend less per student than we do. We manage our expenditures, and most of our increased staff that we've had over the last several years is mandated or security related. To try to paraphrase this at a much higher level.
So this is the first draft of the,
Yeah, so what we'll do,
to the board. I know you've had plenty of drafts.
what we'll do is in April, committee will have our proposed final. Now we'll go through, and then May we'll ask for approval of the final. And there'll be some slight modifications from where we are to the proposed final. I mean, we're still working through some things. We're still really keeping an eye on healthcare, playing around some ideas with stop loss and so on and so forth. So there are some things that could change. I mean, our property insurance and workers' comp, we haven't met and have a general idea. I mean, we have a general idea, but don't know for sure. So there's still a lot of moving parts with this that we need to solidify the numbers. But tentatively, as we sit here today, that's how we proceed, or how we view to proceed forward.
Aaron, is this on the website or is there something you can send to us so we can take a look and release?
The slideshow?
Yes.
And I'll send the slideshow to you, and then we post the videos of the presentation on our website. I don't want to give you extra work, but
It looks like the amount of resources we have for IT is going down quite a bit. Concern.
from a staffing perspective, no. I think that we've gotten better at streamlining what we are purchasing in regards to from a support services. I guess it really depends on the replacement cost and of our equipment too on that year and whether it would be down or up, because we replace Chromebooks and iPads every year, but that's not necessarily for access points. Do we do that every year, right? Or so some years are larger than others. We did part of the tech classified in tech is adding another position to IT was one of the positions. You can see why that increased. But that's all I can. If you want me to look into that further, I can look into it. But that's all I can think of.
No, I was just looking at the fund balance, the amount that's allocated for IT is going down.
Yeah, I mean, again, our philosophy and what we're requesting is in April, we would actually bring a revised motion for the investment income. But the idea is it should be built into your structured budget anyway. Therefore, from a fund balance perspective, you have it built in. I mean, that's just a savings, right? As you're going forward, unless we have some unforeseen like large equipment purchases that we need to do. But we try to keep that within our structural budget and our replacement plan every year.
And what does our replacement plan look like? How often is something? Is it 3 years? Is it 5 years?
It depends on the
As
asset.
far as a device, either a iPad or a Chromebook that the students have.
So it is kindergarten comes in, you'll have an iPad. You keep that same iPad until second grade. At second grade, you get a Chromebook. You keep that same Chromebook until fifth grade. When you go to sixth grade, you get a new Chromebook. You keep that Chromebook till eighth grade. When you go to ninth grade, you get a new Chromebook and you keep that throughout high school. Is that right? I'm pretty sure that's right.
And then our staff machines are on a 4-year cycle.
Thank you.
And we do, beyond those that are on a 3-year cycle, those student devices, we do look to, I mean, there is some salvage value associated with those devices. So we look to capitalize on that on an annual basis as well. Whereas the seniors that you get a Chromebook at your freshman year, and then if you turn it in your senior year, that has no value. No one's paying us anything for a 4-year-old Chromebook.
Any other questions?
Thanks.
Okay, moving on to item 5, Finance and Operations Committee questions from the public. Do we have any questions from the public? Finance and Operations. Hearing none, moving on to item 6,